All right, hello and welcome to another Expert Inside interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP, online sales magazine, and Pipeliner CRM, joining you as usual from a sunny San Diego. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Rick Culleton, who is in Austin, Texas. How are you doing, Rick?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on, John.
Yeah, and Rick is a successful entrepreneur, author, and mindfulness advocate who has learned firsthand that happiness isn't found in wealth, success, or keeping up with the Joneses. It's cultivated from within. Rick is the author of the highly rated inspirational book Messed Up Like You, and is currently you're working on a follow-up book, yeah?
Yeah, quite a bit different, but yes, more about happiness and a more general audience type of book.
Yeah, and you have and Rick, you have a very interesting background going all the way back to when you were, when you were 15 and that, and you in your book, you talk about turning your life around after early struggles. What lessons, entrepreneurial or business lessons, did those struggles teach you? Maybe you didn't at the time, maybe you didn't recognize them at the time, but what were those lessons that you learned that have helped you on your entrepreneurial journey?
Well, the lessons I learned early on that carried over were primarily from my father. My sister and I had a couple of ventures as young children selling vegetables and stuff that were definitely educational. But watching my father be first an employee of a Ford dealership and then later become an entrepreneur and seeing the difference in the quality of his life and happiness, it was it was something that I didn't notice or pay that much attention to in the moment. But my father would come home tired, dirty, and angry, much of the time. And then when he opened his own business, he would come home tired, dirty, and happy. And one day at the dinner table, when I was very young, 12 or so, he'd said, just in general, he said, you'll never be happy working for someone else. And if that had just been spoken to me, I don't know if it would have meant a lot. But having
Mhm.
seen my father and seen the difference in how he felt and acted and how much different he was as a parent. I can't say I took it to heart at the moment, but it sunk in later on, and it was something that I used as a filter in my own decisions.
Yeah. And obviously, I mean, you've also have had the issues of, struggling with ADHD and anxiety and things like that. And that would, to a lot of people, that would sort of, if they were in that situation, they would say, well, I can't be a serial entrepreneur. I can't do stuff like this because there's too much else going on. But you've overcome all of that. So talk to the audience a little bit about how you've managed to overcome what people on the outside would maybe see as, debilitating issues.
Well, I feel that those two are very separated, ADHD and
Sure.
anxiety. Not that one can't cause the other to some extent, but the first thing that I think I would say is that it took me a long time to realize this, that ADHD is not something that hinders you when it comes to entrepreneurship. In fact, I more of the successful entrepreneurs I meet do have ADHD than don't, and
Mhm.
even more surprisingly, many of them don't know it.
Right.
That's and just in the last few years is when I wrote this book and just the conversations I've had with people, and for someone to say, I've heard this more than once. What's it like to deal with ADHD? And I'm looking at them thinking, well, you know very well what it's like to deal with ADHD, but apparently you don't realize it. So, when you learn to master ADHD, it's a powerful tool because it's an overactive mind. I have
Mhm.
ideas all of the time, which is why so many people with ADHD end up becoming successful entrepreneurs. The anxiety side of the coin, although having ADHD that you can't control or don't really understand can certainly cause anxiety, that anxiety can be caused by entrepreneurship. It's just life in general. And until you really get a grip on what's causing it and how to stop it, that can be a much bigger problem, in my opinion, than the ADHD itself.
Yeah, no, no, absolutely, absolutely. And a lot of people live in that world today where they're so consumed, by social media, by all these distractions out there that are probably feeding a lot of that, feeding a lot of that anxiety and keeping people off balance.
Yes, yes, they are.
Yeah. So when you were, how much of a role does self acceptance, self awareness, and really starting to understand yourself? How much of a key is that to achieving some level of happiness?
I think it's extremely important, and I'm nearly 59 years old, and I didn't begin to understand that until just a couple of years ago. I ran through life doing all of the things that I thought I was supposed to be doing. I was winning the race.
Mhm.
I had made all the money. I had an incredible family. I had fantastic employees. I had all these businesses. Yet I woke up shaking in bed, riddled with anxiety, depressed when I wasn't anxious, and just never really sincerely happy. Chasing things that cause pleasure instead of seeking out happiness, not even really understanding what happiness was. And I believe it's a very common problem for entrepreneurs that we run this race and we wear this badge of, I can live on 4 hours of sleep
Yeah.
and anxiety doesn't bother me. And I had this saying in the day, it's like there's two types of people in the world: those who have lied awake all night wondering how they're going to make payroll, and those that hadn't. And how that was like this was something earned, that you need to
Mhm.
be this tough person that could survive these things. And in reality, that was really not making me a better entrepreneur at all. It was making me a worse entrepreneur, a worse father, a worse boss. There wasn't anything beneficial coming from the anxiety and the depression and the lack of sleep and all the things that went along with it.
Yeah, and because let's face it, we tend to celebrate stress, and especially in the corporate business and everything, it's like people wear their stress on their sleeve, and it's almost like a badge of honor. That you're overwhelmed, that you're so busy, that you're all of this. But yet, ultimately, you'll eventually cross over into burnout. So, how do what do you how do you overcome that, or say to people that living in constant stress? I mean, certain amount of yes, you need a certain amount for motivation because you got stuff to do, but living with an excess amount of stress is not a good way to go.
Well, until you've experienced both sides, it's a little difficult to understand. But I would explain it in this way: and that when you're riddled with anxiety and stress and possibly depression on the downside of the anxiety, it's very difficult to make really good decisions. And
Hmm.
you're always, under the gun, making what are really emotional decisions at the time, probably not the right decisions. And it's not just the decisions, but it's the process of coming up with the solutions that help you make a decision. When you're riddled with anxiety, you don't have the clarity to see the answers. And once you clear that out and you get rid of the anxiety and you get yourself to a point of happiness, and first we need to understand what happiness really is, so you know what you're looking for.
Hmm.
But when you get to that state of peace and tranquility, there's a clarity that comes that makes it extremely easy to do these things that you were working so hard at. So the old Rick who would work 14, 15 hours a day and live on 5 and 6 hours of sleep would get far less done than the Rick of today who sleeps for 8 hours, spends the first 3 hours of his day essentially getting ready for the day, and only works about 3 to 4 hours a day. I accomplish 3 times what I used to accomplish, and it's much higher quality work, better decisions.
So tell me a bit about your daily routine, because I found this very interesting, because I've been talking for a while about the negative impacts, or how people start their days, and the inputs they have, where they start off with social media or the news or whatever, and they're all like not even out of bed yet, and they're already discombobulated and probably maybe a little anxious, because I saw Rick's doing on social media. It looks like Rick's doing fantastic. My life sucks in comparison. Or I click on the news, and it doesn't matter where you sit on the political spectrum, the news is there to provoke you. It's not there to inform you. It's there to get a reaction out of you. And so a lot of people start their days in this kind of state of heightened anxiety, I would say.
Well, I guess the most important part of this, and this part's not covered in this next book. It's a little bit, but the first part and the most important part of your day is your night. So obviously, sleep. I'm sure that's you've heard that until
Mhm.
you're tired of
Yeah.
hearing. That is an extremely important part. Not just lying in bed, but actually getting to sleep. But I start my day out without. So it's called techno fasting, but that means there's no gadgets around. So when I wake up in the morning, I now am on a really good cycle where there's no alarm, there's no phone by my bed. Um, I get up in the morning and start my day off with a beverage that just puts sodium and magnesium back into my body. and I go from there to meditation, and I work on a point system, so that amount of time can vary, but it's not a very long meditation. Normal on most days, it's less than 10 minutes. I check my blood pressure. I start out with 25 push-ups and some stretching, and then I move on to journaling, which usually lasts about 30 minutes. That's a little bit of a break in my morning, and depending on where I am in the world and when the sun came up, as soon as the sun is up, that so this could be before even the meditation, I'll get outside for 5 to 10 minutes, depending on the amount of sunlight, to help set my circadian rhythm. And then as I go through the day, there's a I'll when I get through that part of the day, there's 25 minutes of work, and I use a timer. Then I take a 10 to 15-minute break, and I'll do some more stretching. I go back to work for 25 minutes. And one thing that is key for me is that when I sit down at that computer to do that work, I'm now probably 90 minutes into my day. So I've started the day with no screens, no news playing in the background, no notifications, nothing. When I get to the computer to do my work, I have a detailed list of what I'm going to accomplish. It's probably not a lot because it's 25 minutes and I want quality work. As a matter of fact, today it was a press release that I had to write.
Mhm.
And I did a really good job. I used some AI. I was very impressed with what I had done, and I finished it with 5 minutes left and did a little bit of email proof. So then I go on, I do some stretches, I go back and I do some more work, which today it was more email. And then I take an hour walk outside. When I come back, I take a cold plunge. I use a snorkel, so I go completely underwater. Um, Cold plunge, and then I do infrared light therapy, and that's for me. That's the the basics of my morning stack. My exercise routine will rotate depending on whether it's an A day or B day. I'll either be running or working out in the gym. But um, for most people, the very first part of that I covered is really what it
Yeah.
takes to start you with a very level day. And you need to, obviously we all need to work. I'm a
Sure.
realist. Like I'm not a monk on a mountain in Central America. I need to integrate myself into the real world every single day. I just do that with precision and with choice and with a real an expected outcome. When I sit down to do some work, I have tasks at hand and I have thought about how I'm going to go about them. And having come at that with a very clear mind, I mean, after having done meditation and some stretching and journaling, getting outside, you hit that computer, and I can only speak for myself, but that 20-minute press release I did today is better than any 3-hour press release I ever created years ago. It's
Yeah.
just, it was more, I had thought through it through all stages. When I'm not riddled with anxiety and there aren't all of these thoughts and horrors running through my head, I have so much more clarity that it just kind of came out. Like it was already
Mhm.
there. The work had been done before I sat in front of the keyboard. I knew what to say. And of course, today, as we speak, I have lots of friends that help me, like Manis and Grok.
Yep.
So my work has become better and easier. Um, to that regard, I've got someone right there at my shoulder to proofread for me. That makes life much easier too.
No, it absolutely does. And I guess, for people watching or listening, oftentimes, as you said, I mean, because of that clarity and what you had done when you come to do the press release, you're able to put out something, that's better and way more impactful than you would have done otherwise. But most people are coming to these things in a frenzy of all these other things they're doing, and I feel like that's the key there. It's all of the other noise and the distractions and everything is diminishing your ability to turn out good work.
Absolutely. And I was that guy for so long.
Mhm.
I was just
Mhm.
rushed through everything. Like, here's the list of things I'm going to do. And it was always a half-assed effort. It was, maybe not effort, but the product was when you got
Mhm.
done, because when I would be writing that press release, if I would have gone back in time 3 hours, when I'm writing that, I wasn't even thinking about that. I was thinking about the next thing on the list that I needed to get done, or the next three things on the list I needed to get done, and how I was possibly going to get out of there in time for happy hour. I mean, those were the types of things that went through the old Rick's mind. And, I have to give myself some credit because I survived so long in that mode. And when I look
Mhm.
back, life was so difficult that way, and things are so much easier now. Um,
Yeah.
it's it's not easy to get to where I am at this point. It takes some work,
Mhm.
but the reward is tremendous.
So tell me a little bit about how much does the physical activity and sport and exercise, how much does that inform and support the mental strength?
I believe that it's a big importance, and for me, it's probably a bigger importance than most. I became an athlete when I was 40. I don't know what triggered it exactly, but I used it as a bit of a coping mechanism. If you read the book, I've been at the wrong end of the government for
Mhm.
quite some time, and I spent a great portion of my life thinking I was going back to prison, and I found athletics as a way to um, get out of my own head, and it stuck with me,
Mhm.
for a long time. And I don't run triathlons or fight anymore, but I'm still in the gym 3 days a week. I run 2 days a week,
Mhm.
and my workouts aren't incredible. They're average. My runs are 2 miles. I'm not a marathon runner. I get just enough in there to be physical, and it has a
Mhm.
very significant impact. If for some reason that I can't do my usual routine, sometimes it might be extended travel or something of that sort.
Sure.
I feel the difference mentally, not just physically, but mentally. I'm not as good as I was.
Yeah, and what I like about what you just said is you said like I run because somebody listening to this might have said, "Oh, this guy probably runs like 15 miles before breakfast every morning." You just it's not the point of whatever; it's the point of just getting up and doing something. For some people, it may be just get up and walk for a little bit. And I feel like that it's so important that a lot of people have lost the connection with the world, with the universe around them, because they don't take any time out during their day just to be, and maybe just to be in nature, just to exercise, even if it's like a 10-minute walk or whatever.
Yes, and I think it's important for people out there to understand. And you know, I look at people like Wim Hof, and then I'm like, gosh, I wish I could be that guy. But when you listen to his interviews, he'll tell you I hate the cold. And he was brought to what he does because he lost his wife. It was a lot of
Mhm.
suffering that took place. And so your viewers understand, not only do I only run 2 miles, on a good day, my pace is 10 minutes. I am not a good runner, and I
Mhm.
don't like running,
Yeah, I'm
but
there.
I understand the benefits of it. I see them. I use an aura ring and a Garmin, some others, and I've seen my VO2 max increase. I've seen my resting heart rate decrease. I know how I feel when I do this, and there are days that I do not want to get in that cold plunge. And
Uh,
but
I
there's a
can
lot to be gained from that too. So I don't want someone to look at this and say, I'm not superhuman. I can't do what these other
Mhm.
people do. And it none of us are. The athleticism is all in your brain. You have to overcome the pain and just learn to live with it. And anybody, you could find an Olympic athlete and just ask them, do you love your training? If you're going to get
Yeah.
an honest answer out of them, and I've trained with some of these guys,
Uh,
it's going to be hell no. None of them want to get up at 4 a.m. and go swim for 2 hours or
yeah.
ride their bike for 100 miles. That is not it's not ingrained in any of us. So don't think that you're different and that you're never going to be healthy because you don't like to run. I don't
Yeah.
like to run.
Yeah, I don't like to run either. I run as well. I'm a bit like you. My pace is about the same as yours, and I could do 2 3 miles or whatever. But I'm my wife used to be. She doesn't run as much now because of like some injuries, but she used to be a big runner, like and run like 10, 15 miles and all that, and always go on about the runner's high. And I'm like, there's no such thing. I've never experienced that. I've never been out running and gone, wow, this is the greatest thing ever. When I'm out running, I'm out there because I'm doing it for a purpose, as you said, like for health or whatever. I'm not doing it because I love running.
Yes. I don't drink anymore, but when I did, the furthest I ever ran was a half marathon, but I would do some triathlons. And amongst our group, we had a joke that the runner's high was the beer you had after you finished the run.
I'm right there with you. Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. If there's a pub at the top of the mountain, I'll run up to that, no problem. Um, but so, and what are some of the other strategies that you use in order to keep yourself like mentally fit and in the game?
Well, when it comes to strategies, I try to prioritize the things that I do. So I'll keep an ongoing list of the things that I need to do and would like to do. I'm a big Dr. Covey student. So, it's, the urgent, the not urgent, the important, the unimportant. And I use that filter on a lot of this, but then I'll take things off that list that I feel are important, or that I don't want to become urgent. And then I'll put them on today's list. These are the things that I'm going to tackle. And when I do that, one thing that I think I could probably share with everyone that would help, if you're a person who's, the night I make my list the night before. If you're making this list and you're just so over ambitious that I'm going to get all of this stuff done tomorrow, you're setting yourself up for failure for a
Yeah.
couple of reasons. One is you've crammed too much into the day to start with, but you haven't left any room for the unexpected. And nearly every day of my life has something unexpected in it. I mean, you and I had technical
Yeah,
difficulties
yeah,
getting this thing set up. So if I had crammed my day full and I didn't have that extra 20 minutes to make my microphone work, where would we be? I'd be
yeah,
rushing through this thing in a state of panic. So my advice is that, one, I have to work with lists, but if you do, that if you work from a master list and then put these things onto what you would call a daily task list, that you keep that list light. If you get everything done, you can always go back to that master list and pick off an
yeah.
extra credit assignment or something if you want to, but don't overfill your schedule.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point because I think we often do that. We put too many things. I mean, if you put down three things on your to-do list, you probably think, well, that's looking a bit light for today. But they may be three really important things that if you got all three done, you'd have probably one of the best days ever.
Yes, quality
Mm.
work, not quantity.
Quality.
Quality.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just finally, tell us a little bit about the upcoming book and what is that going to cover?
Well, we actually covered quite a bit of it. It'll be in more detail, but this whole book is about my morning stack. So eventually, when we finish the series, it's going to be, the entire day, everything from getting to sleep to the morning stack, what you do. But this book is focused primarily on your morning stack, and it's really a foundation for your day. It starts out with techno fasting and not using technology in the morning and not having noise in the background, to meditation, getting outside to set your circadian rhythm, uh, journaling, particularly gratification journaling. And if you want a bonus, I write with my left hand, my non-dominant hand, for the first paragraph every day. I This is something that came out of a neuroplasticity lesson that I'd had, and it, assumably it prevents Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and such, because the lesson I was given was that if you're a great guitar player and you learn to play a new guitar piece that's really hard, you just become a little bit better guitar player. But if you're a
Mm.
good guitar player and you learn to play Mary Had a Little Lamb on the clarinet, you're creating neuroplasticity. You're learning a new skill, and that will do far more to stave off mental disorders down the road, such as Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and dementia. So if you're someone inclined to journal, try journaling with your left hand for a while, but throw that in there with a little bit of exercise in the morning to get the blood pumping and getting outside, and that's what this book is all about, is about creating a foundation for your day. And in hopes that we're going to give you a start, like these are the things that everybody can do, and then you start with this. Mine has evolved a great deal over the last couple of years, and we'll give you the tools to help your own list evolve so that you come up with a morning stack that fits your lifestyle, where you live, and what your abilities are.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thanks again, Rick. I mean, you've shared some fantastic insights. All of Rick's information below this video. But before we go again, just remind people about what you do.
Well, I've got a computer company called discountelectronics.com. I have hotels in Central America. The most famous is called Hotel Haco. I have a real estate company in Austin, Texas, and I'm finishing up my second book. And you can see more about that book at mymorningstack.com.
Excellent. Like I said, all the details will be below this video. So thanks again, Rick, and thank you for watching and listening. And I will see you all again very soon. Thank you.